Deep in the Caucasus Mountains, a Soviet bunker team accidentally breached a void. They found a 130-foot vertical shaft leading to a silent underground megastructure. The discovery was so terrifying it was erased from the records. But the thing nobody tells you is why.
Nobody builds something that big underground just for fun. You don't do that unless you have to.
The Nazis searched for this exact spot, and modern explorers who found it have perished. This structure wasn't built as a tomb, it was built to contain something. And new evidence suggests it's still active. What the Soviets found. During the absolute peak of the Cold War, the Soviet Union was obsessed with survival. They were building secret cities, hidden weapons labs, and most importantly, doomsday bunkers. These weren't just basements, they were subterranean command centers designed to withstand a direct nuclear exchange. And for one of these top-secret projects, they chose the most remote, rugged, and impenetrable location they could find: the towering, desolate Caucasus Mountains. The year was 1973. A special engineering battalion was tasked with drilling deep into the solid granite of Khara-Hora mountain. The plan was to hollow out a space large enough for a regional command and control center. The work was brutal, the rock was dense, but then something went wrong. The thing nobody tells you about drilling into solid rock is what happens when you hit nothing. The drill, straining one moment, suddenly punched through into a void. The engineers assumed it was a natural cave or a fissure. Standard procedure was to send a geological team to map it, to see if the bunker project needed to be moved. What they found, however, stopped the entire project dead in its tracks. This was no cave. They found a vertical shaft descending straight down into the mountain. It was over 130 feet deep. But the walls were the first impossibility. They weren't rough-hewn rock, they were unnaturally smooth, almost polished, and formed a perfect uniform cylinder. There were no signs of the typical irregularities, no cracks or formations you'd expect from natural geology. This wasn't a job for regular army engineers. This was a job for the specialists. The Kremlin assembled a hand-picked team of military speleologists, scientists and Spetsnaz soldiers trained for the deepest, most hostile underground environments on Earth. They were men who had explored uncharted caves in the Urals, men who operated in total darkness for weeks at a time. They were, in short, the best, and they were completely unprepared. The descent began. The shaft was rough-hewn, blasted from the native granite of the mountain. It was cold and the air was damp. As they descended that 130 feet, their state-of-the-art instruments started acting strange. First, it was the compasses. The needles didn't just twitch, they spun wildly, useless. Then their high-frequency radio communication became filled with a deep, pulsing static. It wasn't just white noise. The team's radio operator later swore he heard a low, rhythmic cadence beneath the interference, like a machine breathing. When they reached the bottom, the natural, jagged rock of the shaft simply ended. It didn't transition. It stopped flat, as if sheared off by a laser. They stepped out into an immense chamber unlike anything documented in human history. The space was massive. Their powerful military-grade lights struggled to find the ceiling, which soared over 60 feet high. The beam just seemed to get swallowed by the oppressive darkness. But again, it was the geometry that was wrong. It was too perfect. The walls met the floor at a perfect mathematical right angle. The floor and ceiling were uniformly flat, polished to a mirror-like sheen, and the chamber itself was built from colossal dark stone blocks. We're not talking about simple bricks, we're not even talking about the impressive stones of ancient Egypt or Peru. These were megalithic blocks, some weighing as much as 200 tons. To put that in perspective, that is 4 times heavier than the largest blocks used to build the Great Pyramid of Giza. A single block weighed more than 30 adult elephants, and there were thousands of them, forming a room so large the explorers' lights couldn't even find the far wall. These giant blocks were fitted together with exquisite, terrifying precision. The seams were so tight that the explorers, in their disbelief, tried to slip a thin military blade or even a piece of paper between them. Nothing. There was no mortar, no visible adhesive. It was as if the stones were welded together at a molecular level or fused by some unimaginable heat. The surface of the stone itself felt wrong. It was freezing cold, but it didn't feel like rock. It felt, as one soldier reported, like cold, dead skin. What terrified the hardened Soviet team, though, wasn't just the impossible size, it was the silence. This was deep inside a mountain, yet there was no drip of water, no echo of shifting rock. It was a heavy, pressurized silence that seemed to deaden all sound, and there was the complete lack of any evidence of construction. There were no chisel marks on the stones, no tool scratches, no carving errors, no debris in the corners that would indicate quarrying or construction. They found no nearby source for this specific black granite. The logistics were staggering. The team's engineer, a man who had built missile silos in Siberia, ran the numbers in his head. To move a 200-ton block on the surface would require massive cranes and a dedicated railway. To do it inside a mountain, it was beyond even their own advanced 20th century engineering. How do you get the blocks in? The shaft they had just used was their own creation. The horrifying implication was that the blocks were never brought in. This structure was here first, and the mountain had somehow been formed around it. And there was something else missing. There were no human traces. None. No cultural artifacts, no pottery shards, no soot stains from torches or lamps. No carvings, no paintings, no altars, no offerings, and no skeletal remains. This wasn't a tomb, it wasn't a temple, it wasn't a fortress or a city. It was a sterile, perfect, impossible megastructure. It was a machine. The report sent back to Moscow was flagged at the highest level. It bypassed normal channels and went straight to the top. Geologists were baffled. Military strategists were, to put it mildly, concerned. The Khara-Hora bunker project was immediately and quietly abandoned. The official record stated the project was canceled due to unstable geology and unpredictable magnetic anomalies. Unpredictable was the key word. The anomalies weren't just scrambling compasses. The team's final report suggested the field was structured, almost intelligent, and that it was the source of the strange, pulsing static. The entrance to the shaft was dynamited, filled with concrete, and buried. The entire area was declared a restricted military zone. The team members were separated, debriefed, and forced to sign secrecy oaths binding them for life. Their location became one of the Soviet Union's most closely guarded secrets. They had come looking for a place to hide from a future war, and instead they found a structure that seemed to come from a past that couldn't exist, or a future they couldn't possibly comprehend. The Soviets buried the secret, but the mountain's mystery was far from over. Legends of the Stone Doors. You see, the Soviets weren't the first ones to be terrified by Khara-Hora Mountain. The thing is, the military engineers and geologists, they were outsiders. If they had asked the locals, they might never have started drilling in the first place. For generations, the communities around the mountain have passed down stories. These aren't just quaint folk tales, they are warnings. They speak of cursed lands where birds fall silent and animals refuse to go. They whisper of an unseen force that dominates the natural world. One of the most common accounts, passed down for centuries, describes compasses spinning uncontrollably. Long before the Soviets detected magnetic anomalies, local shepherds knew that in certain areas on the mountain, the magnetic needle would just go wild. In modern times, travelers and hikers report the same thing. Their GPS devices fail, their electronics fritz. This lends incredible credibility to the idea of powerful magnetic or energetic fields linked to that specific area. But the folklore gets even more specific. It speaks of ancient stone doors hidden within the mountain. These doors, according to oral tradition, are not just entrances to caves. They are said to open onto miles of underground tunnels, leading to entire subterranean cities, long sealed and forgotten. Some of these local beliefs hold that these domains were never meant for humans, that they were built by unknown beings or a civilization that existed before our own. And what many overlooked until recently were the stories of disappearances. Travelers who ventured too close to these supposed entrances, sometimes they just didn't come back. Their camps, their equipment, their belongings, often found abandoned with no clues as to what happened to them. Now, it's easy to dismiss this as folklore, just spooky stories. But then, the Nazis showed up. In 1942, Hitler's armies pushed into the Caucasus in Operation Edelweiss. The official reason was to seize the vital Soviet oil fields. But among the regular troops was a secret, shadowy group, the Ahnenerbe. This was Heinrich Himmler's personal pet project. The Ahnenerbe was an organization devoted to finding proof of Aryan supremacy, uncovering ancient civilizations, and capturing occult power. They were obsessed with hidden realms like Shambhala and Agartha. They believed the myths of an ancient Atlantean root race, and they viewed the Caucasus, this hotbed of strange legends and magnetic anomalies, as a potential gateway, a place where they could find this lost ancient power. Unverified but persistent reports suggest that an Ahnenerbe commando team, led by occult researchers, reached the lower slopes of Khara-Hora. They weren't there for oil. They were there for the legends. They were looking for the stone doors. We don't know what they found. Like the Soviets after them, their mission was abruptly abandoned. All exploration around Khara-Hora suddenly ceased. Decades later, in the 1970s, a carved stone bearing a faint emblem, one eerily similar to a swastika, was discovered near the mountain. Was it a marker? Or, as some now believe, was it a warning they left behind for anyone else who came looking? The Nazis and the Soviets, two of the most powerful and ruthless regimes in history. Both were drawn to this mountain by its legends, and both ran. The 200-ton puzzle after the fall of the Soviet Union, the secrets of Khara-Hora began to leak out. The sealed-off zone, the classified reports, the rumors, it all attracted a new generation of explorers. But the more they investigated, the more baffling the megastructure became. The core of the mystery wasn't just that it was there, it was that it couldn't be. Let's talk about those 200-ton blocks again. Modern engineers looking at the data are stumped. The heaviest-duty mobile crane in the world today can lift something this size. But we're talking about a structure that is, by all accounts, thousands, if not tens of thousands of years old. How did a prehistoric culture quarry a 200-ton block of solid granite? And that's the second problem. There is no nearby quarry. Geologists have scoured the region. The specific type of dense, crystalline granite used in the structure is not found anywhere in the surrounding mountains. This means the builders would have had to transport these 200-ton blocks over dozens, maybe hundreds of miles, and then somehow get them inside a mountain deep underground. But the real mind-breaker, the detail that sends shivers down the spine of every scientist who studies it, is the complete absence of tool marks. You see, when you cut stone, you leave a mark. A bronze chisel leaves a different mark than an iron one. A laser cutter leaves a different mark than a water jet. The blocks of Khara-Hora have no marks at all. The surfaces are not just smooth, they are flawless. It's as if the stones were melted into place or cut with a technology we still don't possess. This impossibility is what truly defines the megastructure. It's a structure built by nothing. No tools, no quarry, no transport marks, no debris, no construction. It just is. And then there's the silence. What many overlooked in the initial reports was the cultural silence. In that entire massive 130-foot deep shaft and the 60-foot high chamber, there is not one single trace of the builders. Think about any other ancient site. The pyramids had hieroglyphs. Stonehenge had burial mounds. Even simple caves had soot from fires and carvings on the walls. These places were used. They were part of a culture. The Khara-Hora megastructure is sterile. No soot, no carvings, no broken pottery, no bones, no DNA, nothing. This has led researchers to a terrifying conclusion. This place was not a home. It was not a temple for rituals. It was not a tomb to honor a king. It was clean. It was built for a purpose. Its function was purely technical. This wasn't architecture. It was engineering. It wasn't a building. It was a machine. A silent, perfect, impossible machine built by an unknown intelligence for an unknown reason. This sterile, silent, impossible place was waiting, and someone finally went back in. Vanished in plain sight. The Soviet Union's collapse didn't just end a superpower, it opened a Pandora's box of secrets. Reports that were once buried deep in GRU archives, classified at the highest level, began to leak. And the rumors of the Soviet doomsday bunker at Khara-Hora, the one that found something monstrous, they finally attracted independent researchers. But this isn't a story of triumph. This is where the story gets dark. This is where the warnings begin, because the mountain, it seems, doesn't just keep secrets. It actively doesn't like visitors. In the early 2000s, a Russian spelunker and a highly respected geologist named Arur Gemikov became obsessed with the Khara-Hora legend. He wasn't a fringe theorist. He was a man of hard science. But the fragments he found, declassified seismic charts, redacted military reports, pilot testimonies of magnetic anomalies, they just didn't add up. They pointed to something impossible, something that shouldn't exist beneath that remote mountain. He spent years combing through state archives, cross-referencing old maps, and interviewing the few remaining locals in nearby villages who spoke in hushed tones of the mountain that hums. In 2011, after burning through his reputation and most of his own funds, he and his team found it. They didn't find the main, concrete-sealed entrance from the Soviet reports. They located a secondary access point, a fissure that had opened up after a minor earthquake, a natural crack, or perhaps a ventilation shaft the Soviets had missed. They prepared for a descent. Gemukov was the first man on the rope. He led the initial descent back into the great shaft. His expedition confirmed everything the Soviet report had said and more. The walls were unnaturally smooth, almost polished, with a precision no human drill, not even a modern tunnel borer, could achieve. The geometry was perfect. The 90-degree angles were flawless. The scale was breathtaking, dwarfing any cathedral, a void of perfect blackness that seemed to swallow their lights. But his team reported other things too. Unverified stories from that expedition claimed their modern, high-tech instruments began to fail almost immediately. Digital cameras corrupted, their screens filling with static. GPS signals vanished, which was expected, but their compasses spun uselessly as if they were at the magnetic North Pole. Deeper down, they all reported feeling a strange, low-frequency hum. It wasn't a sound, it was a pressure, something they felt in their bones, in their teeth, more than heard with their ears. They experienced sudden, blinding waves of nausea, crippling disorientation, and an overwhelming, irrational sense of dread. A primal terror that screamed at them to get out. Gemukov's team retreated. It was not an orderly exit. Reports from one team member described it as a near panic. He had confirmed the megastructure was real. He was energized, yet visibly shaken. He returned to the surface, planning a second, better-equipped descent, one with hardened electronics and radiation dosimeters to take samples and measurements. He was on the verge of making one of the biggest discoveries in human history. Then, just weeks after his return, Arur Gemikov perished suddenly. There was no official cause of his passing. No autopsy report was ever made public. His friends and family noted he had no known illnesses. He was a fit, experienced explorer in his prime, and he was suddenly gone. His research, his samples, his unpublished findings all halted, vanished. This might have been a tragic, statistically unlikely coincidence, a sudden aneurysm, a heart attack. But then came Vadim Chernobrov. Chernobrov was a different kind of investigator. He was a well-known Russian researcher, author, and an anomalist. He wasn't just a cave explorer. He studied mysterious phenomena, UFOs, and zones of paranormal activity. He became fascinated not just by the Khara-Hora structure, but by the specific sudden nature of Gemikov's passing. He saw a pattern. He began gathering data not just on the mountain, but on the regional magnetic anomalies. He believed the structure was a node connected to other mystery spots around the globe. Places like the Dyatlov Pass, which was nearby, or the strange gravitational distortions in the Ural Range. He wasn't just looking for a bunker, he was looking for a network. He was putting the pieces together, suggesting the mountain was part of a vast, ancient, and perhaps still active machine. In 2017, just as he was preparing to publish his initial findings connecting Khara-Hora to a global grid, Vadim Chernobrov also perished suddenly. Just like Gemikov, there was no public explanation, no clear cause. He was reportedly in perfect health. Two of the most prominent researchers from two different fields, both digging into the same mystery, both cut down. This pattern, to put it mildly, had a chilling effect on the entire research community. It started to feel less like an archaeological puzzle and more like a curse. The message was clear: stay away. And then in 2018 came the Splashnoff mystery. This one was different. It wasn't a formal expedition. A series of stunning, impossibly high-definition photographs appeared briefly on a few obscure internet forums, places dedicated to urban exploration and deep web secrets. They were credited to an elusive photographer known only as Alexander Splashnov. No one knew who he was. An urban explorer? A stalker who had found another way in? But his images were terrifying. They showed the impossibly smooth walls, the flawless right angles, just as Jemakov had described. But they also showed light, eerie internal reflections that seemed to defy the behavior of natural light. It wasn't a flashlight beam. It was as if the stone itself was faintly glowing with a sick, greenish-blue luminescence. In one photo, the light seemed to form patterns, almost like a massive, dormant circuit board. The photos ignited a global, frantic debate. They were analyzed by physicists and geologists. Were they real? Were they a sophisticated hoax? Geologists argued it could be an unknown form of piezoelectricity or bioluminescence. Physicists argued the light's properties, its lack of a clear source, were impossible. We'll never know. The debate was cut short. Within days of their appearance, the photos vanished. They were erased from the websites. The servers they were hosted on were wiped. Discussions on forums were silenced, the threads locked and deleted. And Alexander Splashnov, he and all his equipment reportedly disappeared, vanished from the digital world and the real one. Scientists and experts who had seen the images, who had commented on them, suddenly refused to speak. They issued retractions claiming they had been fooled by digital artifacts. One prominent physicist who had initially been excited by the images allegedly sent a one-sentence email to a journalist. Some discoveries are better left buried in darkness. Do not contact me again. The Iron Curtain, it seemed, had slammed back down. 2 researchers gone, photos erased. What did they see that cost them everything? The Khara-Hora engine. So what is really going on? People watching this are rightly looking for the mystery. You've got a secret Soviet bunker, Nazi occultists, impossible megastructures, and a string of researchers who meet baffling, untimely ends. It's a wild story, a conspiracy theorist's dream. But the truth might be stranger and far more terrifying than any of the theories that have come before. The speculation has run rampant for decades. What is the Khara-Hora megastructure? One faction of researchers believes it's a weapon, a doomsday device left over from a forgotten, pre-human civilization. They point to the extreme seismic instability of the region. They argue the entire structure is a massive planetary-scale resonance generator. Its purpose? To trigger earthquakes, to destabilize tectonic plates, to cause global tsunamis. The legends of the angry mountain gods who demanded sacrifice? These theorists say that's just a folk memory of the machine testing itself. The Nazis, they argue, weren't looking for energy. They were looking for the ultimate superweapon, a way to hold the entire planet hostage. Another, more fringe group suggests it's a transportation device, a Stargate or a portal. This theory leans heavily on the Nazis' known obsession with Wunderwaffen or wonder weapons. We know the SS Ahnenerbe were researching anti-gravity, time travel, and exotic physics. What if the spinning compasses and magnetic anomalies aren't a byproduct of the machine, but its purpose? What if the structure is designed to focus Earth's energy into a single microscopic point, tearing a hole in the fabric of space-time? The nausea and paranoia? That's just the human brain's reaction to reality itself being bent in close proximity. Then there is the most esoteric theory of all, that the structure is a machine for consciousness. That the real energy the Nazis sought wasn't a physical power source, but a psychic one. This theory claims the megastructure is a massive amplifier built to broadcast or receive thoughts, or perhaps to interface with a planetary-level consciousness. The strange, low-frequency hum reported by Jemukov's team, that, they say, was the voice of the machine. The paranoia and sudden onset dread aren't a sickness, they are an influence. The machine is projecting and the human mind simply cracks under the strain. A weapon, a portal, a psychic amplifier. It's a wild story, but let's get down to earth for a minute. Are we really missing the key details? Here's the thing. When you strip away all the speculation, the portals, the tectonic plates, the psychic gods, you're left with a few hard, undeniable facts. 1. An impossibly built structure exists, engineered to a precision we can barely comprehend, let alone replicate. 2. It is located in the epicenter of massive magnetic and Earth-based energy anomalies, a known hotspot on the planetary grid. 3. Getting close to it causes catastrophic instrument failure, profound nausea, and terrifying paranoia. These facts point in one chilling direction. The final theory, the until now explanation, is this. The Khara-Hora megastructure is not a bunker. It is not a tomb. It is not a city for ancient aliens, a weapon, or a portal. It is a machine. More specifically, it's a dormant or perhaps semi-dormant power plant. What so many researchers overlooked in their search for the mystical or the military was the energy. The local legends of compasses spinning wildly, the Soviet reports of massive magnetic anomalies, the Nazi search for virile energy, Jamukhov's team feeling that low-frequency hum and getting debilitatingly sick. These aren't separate clues. They are all symptoms of one thing, a massive, active, exotic energy source. The theory is that this structure is a telluric engine, an ancient device built not to use power, but to draw it directly from the Earth's natural geomagnetic field. This isn't a gas station, it's the oil well. It's not just any location, it's a planetary node, a point where the Earth's energy ley lines cross, and this machine was built to tap them. Think about it. The 130-foot shaft that descends into the darkness? That's not an entrance, it's a tuning fork, or a waveguide, designed to resonate with the planet's core. The 60-foot-high chambers carved from solid rock? They're not rooms, they are massive capacitors or resonance chambers designed to store and concentrate the energy. And the 200-ton blocks made of that specific, dense, crystalline granite. They aren't just building materials, they are piezoelectric conductors. They are designed to convert the immense tectonic pressure of the mountain itself directly into an electrical charge. The perfect, impossible precision of the stonework isn't for beauty. It's for efficiency. A single gap, a single misalignment, and the entire circuit would fail. This megastructure is an ancient Earth battery. It's been sitting there in a low-power, standby mode for millennia, passively drawing, filtering, and concentrating the planet's energy. This one theory explains everything. It explains the Nazi interest. The Ahnenerbe wasn't just looking for myths, they were looking for the source of the myths. They were looking for a real, limitless, free energy source to power their 1,000-year Reich. They weren't just looking for vril, they were looking for the engine that harnessed it. It explains the Soviet discovery. Their drilling for a secret bunker wasn't just a coincidence. Their deep earth drilling didn't just find the structure, it may have interfered with it. That drill bit punching into the rock could have been like flipping a switch or jamming a key into a lock it wasn't meant for. They didn't just observe the energy field, they may have activated it, causing the field to surge, wrecking their instruments and making the entire site unusable. And most chillingly, it explains the terrible, agonizing ends of the researchers. Arur Gemikov and Vadim Chernobrov didn't just perish by coincidence. They weren't just unlucky. The profound nausea, the disorientation, the paranoia, the rapid breakdown of their bodies, that's what happens to the human body when it gets too close to a powerful, exotic energy field. It's radiation poisoning, but not as we know it. It's the human nervous system being overwhelmed by a frequency it was never meant to encounter. The machine is defending itself, not consciously like an angry god, but passively like a high-voltage fence. When Gemikov went in, he got too close to the live components. When Chernobrov started linking the energy grids, he wasn't just mapping, he was experimenting. He was trying to see if he could draw power from the machine. And Splashnov, the photographer, his camera flashes in the dark may have triggered a defensive discharge. They didn't just get sick, they were cooked from the inside out by an energy we can't even measure. The Soviet bunker led to a megastructure that we finally might understand. It wasn't built by us, it wasn't left as a monument. It's a piece of functioning, ancient engineering. And the most terrifying part, after thousands of years of silence, It's still switched on, and we just knocked on the door. The Khara-Hora machine remains silent for now. Was it a power source, or was it built as a prison? Let us know what you think is really buried in the Caucasus. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The truth is down there.